Welcome YouTube to another episode of D&D Fridays. Today we'll be taking a look at pretty much taking a look at the Arcane Archer subclass for the fighter and seeing maybe some things that we think that would be a good change for the Arcane Archer and how to really improve upon it and make it a little bit more up to snuff. But before we do that, don't forget to subscribe, hit that notification bell, and comment down below on maybe something that you think would be good for the Arcane Archer to have. Without further ado, let's get to it.
Alright.
So the Arcane Archer is a fighter subclass that really focuses on ranged attacks and really using their magical arrows to dish out a little bit of arcane energy, arcane magic, I should say, and have different effects based on what you want to do. It's kind of like taking the Battle Master and putting it into magical arrows, pretty much. And to me, it really encompasses that sort of bow and arrow sort of characters, so maybe something like your Legolas and things of that nature, and really just hanging back a little bit more than a lot of other ranged fighters, or a lot of other fighters, I should say. And it really lends itself to that sharpshooting sort of ideology.
Yeah.
But let's take a look and see what the Arcane Archer currently has. So once you get the subclass at 3rd level, you do get two things. The first is the Arcane Archer lore. So you get to choose proficiency in either Arcana or Nature, and you get to learn either Prestidigitation or Druidcraft. So kind of like a flavor type of ribbon feature, as a lot of folks would call this. This skill is really dependent on what your character is trying to go for. Are you more of like the wizardly sort of thing, or are you more of the druidy ranger type of thing? Same thing with Prestidigitation and Druidcraft, just more so what type of character you're really going after. The second thing is the bread and butter of the class, though, the Arcane Shot. So you first get two uses of it per rest, and you get to say that you use one of these options whenever you make a ranged attack using a short or long bow. And you do get different options, and you gain more options depending on the level. And if the Arcane Shot needs some sort of saving throw, it's going to be 8 plus your proficiency bonus plus your intelligence modifier. So that's definitely going to be a big thing you want to keep in mind. On 7th level, you do get Magic Arrow. So basically, your arrows become magical. So that's useful, especially seeing how there's not really a lot of magic bows out there. So that's going to really help you out a lot. And you also get to get Curving Shot on 7th level as well. Basically, if you miss, you can use a bonus action to reroll the attack against somebody else within 60 feet of the target. So, and according to this makes me think that you can also target somebody that's like behind a wall or something like that. So as long as you know somebody's there, you're probably going to be able to make the attack roll against it.
Yeah, that's a good point.
On 15th level, if you roll initiative and you have no uses of your Arcane Shot, you recover a usage of it. And we do have several Arcane Shot options that we'll take a look at. So, Banish an Arrow pretty much make a Charisma saving throw. If on a fail, the creature is pretty much banished. Speed is zero, and it's incapacitated until the end of its next turn, where it reappears in that same spot or nearby spot. So more or less kind of like a temporary banishment spell. And once you reach 18th level, take 2d6 points of force damage. Beguiling Arrow, pretty much take extra 2d6 points of psychic damage, choose an ally within 30 feet, Wiz save or charmed by chosen ally. Increases to 46 at 18th level. For the most part, the 18th level stuff is really just a little bit of extra damage.
Yep.
For bursting arrows, pretty much means whenever you hit somebody, detonates anybody within 10 feet of the target, as well as the target takes an extra 2d6 points of damage. Enfeebling arrow, extra 2d6 points of necrotic, make a con save, or it does half damage with weapon attacks until your next turn. Grasping arrow, extra 2d6 points of poison damage, speed is reduced by 10 feet, and it takes 2d6 points of slashing damage the first time it moves on each turn without teleporting. Of course, somebody can use its action to move the brambles with an athletics check. Otherwise, it lasts until for a minute, or you use the option to gain, which I think is probably the best arcane shot option in my personal opinion. But we'll go over what stuff needs upgrading momentarily. Piercing Arrow pretty much does what the name of this shot really showcases or says. Basically, arrow passes through objects without cover. Each creature in the line makes a dex save. On a fail, it takes extra d6 points of damage, or half as much on a success. Seeking Arrow, pretty much, you don't make an attack roll for the attack, which is one of the only arcane shots that does something like that. Pick somebody that you've seen in the past. Arrow flies towards that creature, follows the path. North 3/4 cover, half cover, all that good stuff. Target makes a dex save, takes damage on a fail, and you know the target's current location.
Right.
That could potentially be kind of useful.
Yeah, I think that could be useful in your scenario, especially if you're hanging back and the enemies are using a lot of cover. So,
and the last option that you have is Shadow Arrow. Take an extra 2d6 points of psychic damage, and the target has to make a Wiz saving throw. And it's on his fail, it's unable to see anything farther than 5 feet until your next turn. So pretty much that's everything that the Arcane Archer gets so far. So let's take a look at seeing what's some of the stuff that we could do to really improve upon it a little bit. The first thing that actually comes to my personal mind is to increase the number of arcane shots that you can have. Because originally you can only use it 2 times per rest. I think it should, at the bare minimum, scale with proficiency bonus. That way you have more shots per long rest as you go higher up in levels. But at the moment, you only have 2 shots, and you're really going to be super conservative with it, even more so than much more than a full caster, even at 2nd level, let's say.
yeah, no, I agree with that. I think you need to be able to, the number of shots need to increase as you level up. I think at level 18, having only 2 opportunities to actually exercise your subclass seems like a fail, right? You almost start saying, why did I take this?
And especially considering that Arcane Shot is like 90% of this subclass features.
Exactly.
So once you run out of Arcane Shot, which is super easy to do, because that's 2 times you can do it, and you're a fighter, you're getting upwards of 3 or 4 attacks per turn before you action surge, that's going to run out quickly.
Yeah.
So you're pretty much going to be like, well, to your point, why'd I choose this? After those 2 shots, I'm like a subclass less fighter.
Yeah, exactly.
Might as well go with Battlemaster, where I have four, like 4 or 5 options that I can use within a per rest, and I can decide to take the fighting style and or the feat to get more superiority dies.
Yep.
So I think to me this is the biggest thing that I personally would really upgrade and change with this class is really upgrade the number of times you can use it per rest. And me personally, I think um, keeping it in line with your proficiency bonus, I think that's going to be pretty good. Because at late levels, 6 times per rest, I think that's a little bit more reasonable.
Yeah. I mean, I think by the end, by the time you reach that, that last proficiency upgrade, having the same amount of arcane shots that the Battlemaster has of superiority die probably makes sense, because they end up with 6 by level 15. So if you can be around that with the arcane archer, I think that makes sense. I think that moves it in line, a lot more in line with the Battlemaster.
Yeah. And I think, in addition to that, incorporating fighting style specific for the arcane archer, heck, even just for the fighters in general, where you can say just like the superiority dice one, you can pick up you have one extra use of arcane shot, and you can pick up 1 or 2 of the options. I think that'll also be an interesting upgrade for this class, where you don't have to pick up that fine style, but it's there if you want it.
Right.
So I think that's going to be super helpful. Um, and I'm not sure how I feel about, especially when you get Magic Arrow at 7th level. It pretty much pigeonholes you to using a short bow or long bow. Not sure if how I feel about keeping it like that, or including like light and heavy crossbows onto it.
Yeah, I like that idea of allowing crossbows be another weapon type. I think I think you want to stay within this idea that this is a ranger like class, right? Where you've got to use some sort of ranged weapon. But I think adding the addition of crossbow in there actually makes a lot of sense. And I'd actually like this. And again, I don't know if this makes any sense, but I would actually like to see Magic Arrow be gained at like 5th level instead of having to wait until 7th. That way, at 5 you get an extra bonus, and then at 7, when you get your curving shot, so you don't get both of them at the same time. You spread them out a little bit, because in general, by the time you're at 5th or 6th level, you're probably starting to meet some of those creatures that are non-magical resistance. Probably not all of the time, but they're probably sprinkled in there. And if you've just got plain old arrows, right, then you're losing a little bit of that ability to play the game, and that feels a little bit bad to me. So personally, I'd like to see that moved up a little bit.
Yeah, I kind of agree with that. 5th, or if you really want to, 6th level, keep it in line with like Beastmaster Ranger and monks and stuff like that.
Sure, sure.
And honestly, when it comes to curve and shot, um, I think the thing that I'm kind of leaning towards with that is I like the idea of it, but instead of using a bonus action, I think maybe something like, hey, if you miss with a shot, you can make a additional attack as part of that attack action. That might be something cool.
Additional attack. So you basically can rapid fire that shot to try and make up for the initial miss. That I like the idea and concept. I don't know how overpowered that would be once you get your second attack, right? So you'd basically have four chances at that point, right? Um,
I think maybe just I'm thinking maybe doing that, but limiting it to just one additional attack as part of that action. Kind of like how Gloomstalker Rangers kind of
sure.
does it.
I
So,
think that would be a good compromise there.
yep, I think so. So that would kind of help out for those that are probably going to take sharpshooter with this sort of subclass.
Right. Yeah. I mean, I think you would have to take that feat and build it in if you're gonna be an arcane archer.
Yeah.
I do like the curving shot idea though. I think that is pretty flavorful and actually makes a lot of sense. But I do like your twist on it to where it becomes more of a automatic, right, sort of thing versus using your bonus action.
Yeah. And then, if I'm not mistaken, most other fighters also get something at 10th level, where Arcane Archer um, does not, outside of an additional Arcane Shot, or Arcane Shot option, I should say. So, what I'm thinking is on 10th level, you also gain another feature on top of that. I'm not sure what the name of it would be called, but I'm thinking something along the lines of you can utilize your bonus action to really to really focus your your aim on whatever ranged weapon that you have. Like, let's say you're using a longbow to really tighten up the drawstring, and then on the next attack that turn that hits, you do an extra little bit of damage, like an extra d6 or extra d8 points of damage or something like that.
Mm.
I think that might be something that could be kind of cool.
Is there not a feat that allows you to do that where you can essentially take a turn off to aim? Like,
Um, I, I want to say the one thing that I'm thinking of that's somewhat like this is the Rogue Steady Aim feature, but that's giving up your movement and bonus action for advantage on your next attack that turn.
okay.
But but I was thinking probably you giving up your bonus action to gain um, extra D8 on your next attack.
Yeah.
That might
I,
be that would probably give you a little bit of something to do with your bonus action, which you don't really get much of as a fighter outside of Second Wind. And
I actually really like that idea, Nakai. I think being able to use your bonus action to focus in and draw back that bow for that extra, that extra critical shot or whatever makes a lot of sense, right? Especially since then you could throw on one of your arcane shots on that thing and set your teammates up for a good rest of the turn, or set yourself up for a good next turn, depending on what arcane shot or that you chose or whatever, right? So I think and I don't think that would be too overpowered. You're using up your bonus action, which, to your point, they don't have a lot of. Um, yeah, that's a good idea. I like that one.
yeah. Then when it comes to Ever Ready Shot, I'm not a big fan of class features that kind of work like this, and the monk and whatnot, where if you have no remaining uses of your big class feature, you gain extra use of it. Because I feel like you have to make sure that you run out of everything to gain this benefit.
Yeah,
So I think instead of something like this, I think it should be maybe something along the lines of whenever you roll initiative and you don't have the maximum number of your arcane shots, you regain one usage of it. So that way you're not penalized for having a shot or two remaining. You're just like, oh, I have 2 out of my 5 shots left. All right, now I have 3 out of 5.
Yeah, I like that. Just automatically gain one back at the beginning of combat. I could see that. I could also see doing something where you roll a 1d2. You flip a coin, and you know, if it comes up heads, you get your one shot back, right? I don't think it can be more than one shot, but if for that time you don't, like, I think there's some play there, whether it's automatically get it back or add that random chance in there. But I think that concept is better either way than you not having anything and then getting one back. Because I agree with you, I don't like that idea in concept or in practice.
Now we get to the actual arcane shot options. So I think there's a few decent options and a few options that probably needs to be updated per se.
Hmm.
So with the banish and shot, um, overall I don't think it's too bad comparatively. You pretty much blimping something out of existence for a turn. You could potentially blimp out like the big worst thing on the battlefield for the turn, saving some horrendous damage or something like that. So I don't think it's too bad. And honestly, once you reach 18th level, extra 2d force damage, that's probably not why you're going to use it. You usually want to use this option to really blip something out for a turn and more or less force it to skip a turn.
Yeah, I think I was debating whether or not I wanted to have an increase on the damage on this vanishing arrow, whether it always does like a 1d6 and then you bump it to like a 3d6 on 18. But I think what I'd rather see is when you, and I don't know, I think 18th level is too high to make this change. Maybe you do it at like 15th, but instead of being one round, it's now 2 rounds. Increase the number of rounds that thing is banished for. Um, Not dramatically, right? Maybe it is just the 2 rounds, but get it off the battlefield for a little bit longer. So if it is one of the big bads, you have a chance to regroup with, you've got 12 seconds to regroup instead of 6 seconds to regroup, right? So I think I would like to see that change a little bit and maybe take away the damage dealing part of this.
So what you're saying is keep the regular thing, but on 18th level, instead of doing force damage, it increases it to two turns if it fails the charisma save.
Yeah, exactly. And I might even say drop that down to. I'm not sure of their reasoning why they put it at 18th, but maybe even drop it down to like 15th level or something like that, right? Get that a little bit sooner, right? And I might say that for all of these, to be completely honest, right?
Yeah.
Get it a little bit sooner than 18th, but yeah, the overall concept is exactly what you said there.
Okay. So next up we have Guile and Arrow. So this is pretty much the charm arcane option. That and this does do a little bit of extra damage regardless of the save or fail. When it comes to this, I'm not sure I like the charm condition because it's only for one turn, and that's assuming that the ally doesn't. That's assuming that the ally doesn't damage it or forces it to make a saving throw. Um, I don't think this is that strong of an option, to be honest. Even worse than the banishing arrow.
Yeah, I do find it a little bit odd that it's your ally that charms the
Yeah, you choose one of your allies, and if the target is fails the whiz save, then the target is charmed by that ally of yours.
I guess this is maybe evoking thoughts of Cupid. Is that kind of the idea here? Because
Yeah, that's kind of sort of the idea.
yeah, I do like the extra damage being dealt. And again, maybe we move in the same direction that we were talking about with Banishing Arrow on this one is instead of being charmed for a single round, maybe you can be charmed for 2 or 3 rounds. As you know, once you get to like that 18th level or wherever we would invoke this, and have it increase the number of rounds that it's out of combat. Right. That's what just like with Banishing Arrow, that seems like that's the more that would have more utility than just the extra 4d6. Don't get me wrong, the extra 4d6 would be nice, but maybe there's something there to tweak in that one too.
The next one we have is Burst and Arrow. This is one of the first of the more of the arcane shot options that focuses in on damage. So basically, it does a small AOE piece of damage. And to be honest, I think the first change that it needs to be done is starts with the base. So at the base, the target and the creatures within 10 feet take 2d6 force damage. I think that needs to be increased to, I would say, at least 4d6 or so points of damage. I'm not sure if that would be the right number, but at least some more damage on that base. Because honestly, between 3rd level and 18th level, 2d6 points of damage is not that great, to
Yeah.
be honest. Maybe on 3rd and 4th level, but after that, it's not that much damage. And to be honest, within the 10 feet radius, you probably are going to be lucky if you can get like 3 total hits with that.
Yeah. I kind of I think increasing the damage here makes sense. I'd actually like to maybe see it staggered a little bit more to where you get like I don't have a problem starting out at 2d6, but maybe at 6th or 7th level it goes to 3, and then at 10 or 11 it would go up to 4, right? And then by the time you're at 18, it's at maybe 6d6. And then sprinkled out in there, I think the other thing that I'd like to see changed is maybe the radius of the damage gets a little bit bigger. So maybe it goes from 10 to 15, and then at 18th you go to 20 feet. Because the idea is here's you're getting more and more powerful, you're getting better and better at it. So maybe if there was a little bit more of an incremental change of that as you leveled up, instead of being 2d6 for 18 levels and then all of a sudden you're 4d6, and it's you're again, like you said, 4d6 at level 18's not great.
That's
Right.
only 14 more points of damage, and
Right.
at that level, monsters are going to typically have hundreds of points of damage, so that's like a drop in the bucket.
Yeah, exactly. So something like that where it's a little bit, it steps up, it's a little bit more incremental, but
Then Enfeeble and Arrow, I think 2 things need to be upgraded with this. First off is it definitely needs more damage on it, because this is supposed to be one of the more damaging arrows. And I think the second thing is when it comes to the damage dealt by its attacks, weapon attacks are halved until your next turn. I think instead of damage by weapon attacks, I think it should be damaged by any attack that it deals, to include like spells or features or something like that. As weapon attacks, I feel like are super common early game, but by the time you get in those higher tier, higher level sort of encounters, you'll start to see a lot more like casters and things of that nature that aren't making weapon attacks as much.
Sure. Yeah, I like the idea of tweaking it so that it affects maybe all attacks, or um, yeah, or maybe go from, maybe it's spell attacks instead of weapon attacks on this one, and then just change up the style so that, because it is necrotic and that, attacks the intelligence and the constitution and stuff like that. Which I don't know, but I see where you're going, and I think I'm with you on that.
Yeah. And then also another addition to that was I feel comfortable putting it at like all damage that the target does because it is going to be based on a Constitution saving throw, which is the wor- is which is probably which more creatures have good Constitution saving scores than other saving scores by comparison, according to statistics. So I think that that's a little bit more fair.
Yeah, yeah. No, that makes sense. I see your point. Yeah.
So the next thing we have is grasping arrow. To to me, I don't think this is. I don't see too much updates to this. If anything, maybe a little bit more damage, but that's if anything, that's it. Because it automatically takes some damage when you hit it. Its speed is reduced by 10 feet. It takes some more damage as soon as it moves. And if it wants to get rid of it, it or an ally of it needs to make an athletics check to get rid of it. And the key word is athletics check, not a save, so it doesn't get any sort of bonuses that things normally get to saving throws. And this lasts for a minute, so it's kind of like, okay, grasp an arrow against something. As long as it doesn't have some sort of like ranged attacks, it's gonna have to decide: should I move and take damage just to do something, or do I sit around and not do anything and try to see if I can break out of it?
Yeah.
And if
No,
it does try to break out of it, it just wasted its action.
it wastes its turn. Yep. That's exactly right.
So, so honestly, I don't think Grasp and Arrow needs any sort of upgrades. But now I think about it, usually you're not doing this for the poison damage. Usually you're doing it for the athletics check type of stuff and
Right.
movement decrease type of stuff.
Yeah, I think the only thing I might suggest tweaking on this is, again, sort of an incremental increase as you go up, right? Having 2d6 the whole entire time until you get to 18, and then you jump to 4d6, right? So, like you said, maybe raise the ceiling slightly, to where it's a 5 or a 66 at 18, and then you sprinkle in a 3 and a 4 somewhere else in there. But I think, other than that, and that might even be a little bit of a stretch because of the other advantages. I think this is, this arcane shot is actually pretty good.
Yeah. Because I feel like so far, Grasp and Arrow is usually what you're going to be utilizing a lot of the time.
Yeah. Yep.
Next, we have Piercing Arrow. This is pretty much your shooting a line through people, dealing damage, sort of thing. Where basically 30 feet long, each creature in that line makes a dex saving throw just for an extra d6 points of piercing damage. Honestly, this needs to be a lot more damage. Like, I think like a heck of a lot more damage. Because the issue that I have with this is it's a line, 30 feet long line. It is super hard to get any amount of meaningful targets to be lined up in that line. To me, this is kind of like why Fireball is a better spell than Lightning Bolt because of the area of effect.
Gotcha.
So this is why I think that just like earlier we had what was it, Burst and Arrow,
Yep.
which is kind of like a Fireball-ish type of area in terms of comparatively. where piercing arrow is kind of like a lightning bolt style of area. So I think to help make up for that difference in area of effect, I think it needs to be doing more damage than the other one to help make up.
Yeah, I mean, I think the fact that I agree. I think this needs to have a little bit more damage output for it, especially if it's, you're going to use it. You're using it so that you ignore cover, right? So you don't, you want it to have some sort of impact on the field. And I think adding some of that extra damage to it makes a lot of sense there.
Yeah. The plus side is that each creature in the line makes that dex save, and if they fail, they take the extra d6 points of piercing damage plus the normal damage of it. So I think that works with like sharpshooter as well. But my whole idea of adding more than just that d6 is where that whole thought process is coming from.
Yeah. Yeah, that makes sense. Another thought I just had is that maybe this could be transformed into um, potentially a AC reduction type of effect, because it's, you're piercing their armor, right? So it maybe makes them a little bit easier to hit. That might be another twist here.
Maybe another potential twist is, since you're like piercing through the armor or in the flesh and whatnot, maybe the each creature in that line has to make like let's say a Constitution saving throw, and if they fail, they get some sort of like bleed out effect.
Oh,
Like each turn after that, they take like extra like 3d6 points of, I don't know what type of damage or something like that.
I like the idea of a bleed effect. I don't know what the damage would be on something like that, but I like that idea, right?
Yep, and it would take the the shots normal. I would say, now I think about it, each creature in that line would take the shot's normal damage, and then make a con save to see if it gets some sort of like bleed effect or something like
Yeah.
that.
And maybe that bleed effect is that 1d6, but it's more of a, or maybe even dump it down to a 1d4 and make it persistent until they get healed or something like that.
Yeah,
Uh, I like this idea.
and that way, you potentially have like two, three, four enemies taking like a D4 or D6 or something like that. Maybe like 2d6 at later levels, points of damage each turn, which in some cases may add up to, may depend on how long the fight goes, that may add up to like 10d6 points of damage or something like that.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I think if you put a contingency on it of they need to be healed before the bleeding stops or something like that, then it could easily add up if you leave it at a 1d6 extra. So that was kind of where I was thinking, you drop it down to that 1d4 so that it doesn't quite add up as quickly. Plus, if you're only, I guess in my head, if I'm only going to take one damage here or two damage there, maybe I'm not gonna worry about being healed until I've already taken 30 points of damage and be like, oh, I'm almost dead. Let me heal myself and stop it. Right? It might play into that sort of thought process too, right? So
Yeah.
yeah,
Or maybe it's this bleed effect is some sort of like, yeah, it's a bleed effect, but it's some sort of like, I don't know if like counter is the right word of it. Saying it where you have to heal to rid it. Next time you heal, instead of healing you, the next healing word or whatever gets rid of the counter, so now you can heal normally after that.
interesting. Interesting.
So that way, even though the damage isn't significant, you kind of block one instance of healing.
Yeah, yeah, and I think that plays very well into this idea of it's a piercing arrow, right? That you're doing something to disrupt them. You're piercing their defenses, right? You're not just doing extra damage. You're actually hindering them in some other way. Yeah, I like some of these thoughts and these ideas. for this one.
And the next one is Seeking Arrow. Um, I don't personally think this needs too much of an upgrade. As you're pretty much just going to be using this to figure out the target's location. So that like I think this doesn't have too much combat needly, but I feel like you're doing some sort of like chase function or exploration or something like that, and you want to try to figure out where this dude is.
Yeah. Yeah. I, I I think I'd like to see a small tweak here, maybe to where that arrow maybe becomes kind of like a um, debuff, has a slight debuff on it because now you and potentially all of your party know exactly where the enemy is hiding, and so maybe for a turn or something, it adds a little extra debuff. Maybe there's an advantage on the next attack or something like that. But to your point, overall, it is really about trying to find where that enemy is, because it ignores the 3/4 cover and the half cover. Um, so there is that. So something I don't have a good idea of what I would like to see added there, but something that adds just a little extra on the fact that you've seeked out this enemy.
Mhm.
So
Next up is Shadow Arrow. The only upgrade or change I would say to this would be instead of being unable to see anything farther than 5 feet, I would say maybe the target, if it fails to save, it has disadvantage on like perception based rolls to see, and it has disadvantage on any attack rolls it makes for the next turn. I think that might be pretty decent.
yeah, I think I like the idea of giving it disadvantage on its attack for the next turn, and then maybe we do something similar like we did with the banishing and beguiling arrow, where as you go up, maybe it's one turn and then eventually it's two turns or something like that, where they have that disadvantage. Um, I I think that makes a little bit more sense than just saying that they can't see something farther than 5 feet away. But you have that extra, that you give them that disadvantage.
Yeah.
So
So for the most part, I think there's a lot of like minor changes and stuff like that to a lot of the stuff. But I think all in all, I think that's pretty much the ideas that I had.
yeah, I mean, I think for the most part, a few tweaks here and there. I think this becomes a much more intriguing class to play. For, I should say, subclass and to pick up to use on your fighter. Um, I think there's some good bones there, but definitely I think some of the tweaks that we talked about would make it a little bit, a lot more intriguing and a lot more fun in a lot of scenarios. So
Yeah. Well, that is the Arcane Archer upgrade. Definitely would love to hear what other folks have to say, so definitely hit up the comments down below. And until next time, folks, keep your lives geeky.
bye everyone.